Okay. Good evening, Holliston, and welcome to a special meeting of the Holliston School Committee. It's January 28th, and we are interviewing for the Superintendent of Schools for Holliston. We are going to get started. All of us will ask questions. We'll give about 5 minutes per response. I think to get started, we'll all introduce ourselves. So I'll let Tracy start at the end.
Sure. Hi, I'm Tracy Flecker. I am the newest member of the school committee. I've been on the committee since last May, and I have 5 children in the school district, 1 at each level.
Frank O'Gora was elected 2024, so a year before Tracy. I have no kids in the school district, but I have a 3-year-old and a 1-month-old, so soon to be.
Welcome, Dawn Naborski. I have 5 children, 4 of which have graduated from the district, and I'm on my 3rd term as a school committee member. Welcome.
I'm Sarah Fitzgerald. I've been on since, this will be my 3rd year, and I'm chair. And I have 3 kids. 2 are currently in the Holliston schools. I have an 8th grader and a senior, and then my son graduated last year.
Hi, Tim. Dan Alford. I'm in my 3rd year on the school committee. Prior to that, I was on the finance committee for 11 years. I have 2 children in the school system, a 7th grader and a 9th grader, and really looking forward to our conversation tonight.
Welcome, Tim. I'm Hillary Besnahan. I've been on the school committee for 2 years, and I also have a 7th grader and a 9th grader.
I'm Joe Peru. I live in town and have a 5-year-old son. I was elected the same year as both Hillary and Frank. I'm the chairman of the Superintendent Evaluation Subcommittee, so should you get the position, we may be talking quite a bit. So I look forward to our discussion tonight.
So to get started, why don't you give us an overview of why you went into education and how your philosophy and approach as an educator has changed over time, and then why Holliston?
Yeah, no, first off, thank you for having me tonight. Today was a fantastic day. I get to see some of you earlier today in some different capacities, but it was a great day to meet with staff, teachers, support staff, principals. I really want to thank Dr. Jordan for kind of being my tour guide today throughout the district. He did a fantastic job, and it was really helpful kind of navigating the 4 buildings. So a tremendous day, and I think the one thing that was validating for me is that, I already had a very good sense of what Holliston was all about. I think that you are striving and attaining academic excellence, but I think I heard that loud and clear from the staff and from the students, how they feel connected with their teachers. The high school students in particular, who I spoke with the most today, really have a sense of belonging here at the high school, and that's not always the case, and it's really good to hear that about this potential opportunity. I think as an educator, I've been in education now for 26 years. I've made my career working with young people, and I think that the one thing that I've really, throughout my 26 years as a teacher, athletic director, a building principal, and now superintendent, it's all been about creating opportunities for student success and achievement. I think that's what it's always boiled down to, is making sure that we build opportunities, we bring in opportunities through curriculum, instruction, through co- and extracurriculars, that we give students opportunities to be successful, not only in high school, which is where I spend most of my time as a building principal, but now as superintendent, it's grades K through 12, but after high school. What are we preparing these students for after high school? Is it success at the college level? Is it success in the workforce? And obviously both. But I think that is one thing that I've been able to accomplish and work with high-functioning teams throughout my career to build those opportunities for kids. And like I said today to pretty much everybody I spoke with, Holliston is intriguing because of the excellence that's already being captured. And I think that there's a lot of room for growth and potential here. I think that the one thing I heard from teachers, from district and building leaders, from even leaders in the community, is they're looking for more collaboration. And I think we can build a strong sense of team here. We can row the boat in the same direction, so to speak. And I look forward to that challenge. I think my leadership style is one that I'm very visible, I'm approachable, I'm very hands-on, but I don't micromanage. I want to empower our building and district leaders to be successful leaders, to do their job, but to use me and our team as a way to work through problems together collaboratively. to be a thought partner, to bring forward those problems of practice as a team. Because I've said this throughout this process, that the answer is always in the room. And I think we need to work as a team to figure out the best next steps for Holliston. And I'm excited about that opportunity.
Yep.
So, we often receive feedback that the district needs to improve in the areas of communication and transparency. How would you ensure effective communication and transparency with the district, educators in the Holliston community as a whole, and what strategies have you employed in your career to build trust and open lines of communications with key stakeholders?
That's a good question. I think it starts with how do families receive the communication, right? So I would need to figure out, do families want to receive emails, messages through, let's say, S'more, which is a software that I think members of the community use, one call, social media, or all of the above. And I think that's where the starting point would be, is how do students and families and teachers receive their information? What's the best venue to do that? Once we kind of have that established, I think it's my method of communication is often, is transparent, and I welcome that feedback through my communication. I'm very frequently, currently, I send out S'mores, which, like I said, I think building principals in this district currently use that as a very quick way to get out communication with families and students and staff about what's happening in the district, whether it's a new initiative. I know that all of our building principals currently use it to message what's going on a weekly basis within the school community, and I think that's very important. What we talked about today, and I talked about this again with all the stakeholder groups, is that we need to celebrate the successes here at Holliston. We also need to be very transparent about the obstacles that we're facing. So whether that's a financial obstacle, whether that's an obstacle with personnel, whether that's an obstacle with what we're seeing as part of a strategic plan initiative that's not going our way, we need to message that appropriately to all of our stakeholders. So I've used all the methods that I've mentioned already to kind of articulate the vision and mission of my current district. I would continue to use that here in Holliston. But I think it starts with finding out what is the preferred method of communication. Just like we want to know how our students learn, their learning modalities, this is kind of the same kind of idea. We want to understand how parents receive information the best. And I think as far as communication with the school committee, I think it can be done in several different ways. I think there's always an opportunity to have weekly or bi-weekly one-to-one meetings with any member of the school committee, and I welcome that. I would like to have a cup of coffee and discuss what's going on. But I think the work should be done between meetings. And what I mean by that is there shouldn't be any surprises on either side, that we should have ongoing conversations about what's going on in the district, within the buildings, that it shouldn't just happen here in these public forums, that we should have those conversations ongoing, so that you guys are fully in the know, and if there's an issue that you're hearing, I can help resolve that and get an answer back to you in a timely fashion.
Okay. How do you intentionally build and sustain a safe, positive, and inclusive district culture for all students, staff, and families, particularly those from marginalized groups, immigrant communities, or who may experience prejudice or bullying? Can you share specific examples of policies, practices, or initiatives that you've implemented in the past and explain how you evaluate whether those efforts are having a meaningful and measurable impact on the school climate and student well-being?
Yeah, great question. I think if I have any follow-up questions, I'll ask. That's like three parts to that. But it's a great question. I think I have it all.
Let me know.
I said this earlier today, and I want to share this with the full committee. I think one of the greatest parts about today is when I walked into the middle school lobby, I saw all the flags that were proudly displayed for anybody to come in and see as they walked into the foyer. I saw hello or welcome in probably about 20 different languages in the media center. And those small things, which maybe they seem small to us, I think go a long way in showing the students and the families of this community how we welcome everybody. You don't see that in every school, and I will fully admit we don't see that in my current district. We do a lot of that work, and I'll explain that in a second. But to that level, I can't match that. So that was very impressive. And I saw that through Nearly every classroom I went into, at all levels, I saw something that supports all students, whether it was a sign on the door, it was a sticker, a flag, or 2 flags. But that was impressive to see, that there was a very warm and welcoming, inviting environment for all students, their families, and our staff. Regarding the work that I've done and that we've done in various districts, and most currently in North Brookfield, we teamed up with what's called Mass Ideas, and Karen Thompson and her group, and we've done a lot of work with both our faculty and staff, and also now our students. And what this group has done is this is very thoughtful and strategic planning around teaching teachers a common vocabulary around being anti-racist, and talking about biases and the isms, and also how to support each other when these difficult conversations may arise. We've now kind of begun phase 2 of that work, where we're training a group of 7 or 8 high school students to then facilitate these difficult conversations with the middle school students. And I think we did this purposely. One, we wanted to build capacity with our staff, develop that common language across the district. But now, intentionally adding the students into that phase, we want students to be the strong voice in kind of stamping out and being anti-racist when they see these situations, and how they can support each other through maybe some challenging conversations as a 15, 16, 17-year-old student. So I'm very proud of that work. We also, in addition to, we wrote a grant a few years ago, and we sent another group of students to the Southwick's Playbook Initiative, which was, you may have heard of it, it was a day-long training, kind of similar to what we're doing right now with our students, but it's a day-long training with students from across the state, where they were given scenarios to act out, and then, again, empower students and student voice to be anti-racist in the school setting. And so that work has really been very powerful in our district. And we've kind of stayed the course, even when there's been some maybe not so positive fanfare. I think we've grown as a district because of this, and I think our students will tell you that the district and the school is a place where they feel safe and supported. And how do we know this? Well, we talked to them about this, but we also have sent out culture and climate surveys to our students, and the resounding responses that they feel safe in the district, they feel safe in their school. Are we perfect? No. Do we still have issues? Yes. But I think we're empowering our kids with skills they can use in real time to combat these issues, and to empower and support our staff when these difficult situations may arise. So I think similar work can continue. I'd be curious to know kind of what Holliston's been doing, and I think a lot of that work can continue in Holliston. I think there's similar situations and opportunities in Holliston for students and for staff.
Just as a, can I go follow?
Yes.
Talked about students and staff. Any examples where families were included? That's where you bring in the community from my perspective. So
Yeah.
if you could provide a little context there.
So we didn't have any official training for families. What I will tell you is that I have worked with what's called the Rural Justice Network. Last spring, they interviewed me around equity and inclusion, and they've given some money to the school district, and we've used that money to support these trainings. And I've messaged that to the families. I think that would be probably tier 3, if you will. I think my first thought was to get our staff and our students into a place where they felt confident in having these conversations. I think there's an opportunity in a community like Holliston where I think we could have a strong sense of family engagement with these conversations and these trainings.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, how do you balance supporting struggling students while also challenging advanced learners to ensure a rigorous education for all? Do you have any concrete examples of that? And along those lines, how do you ensure that student voice is meaningfully informs district decisions, and that students feel heard and valued in terms of how those?
I'll start with the second part. I think student voice is very important to the decisions we make. I mean, we are here to work with students. This profession, whether you're a teacher, a principal, superintendent, it's a people profession, right? And we're working with kids. This is not a business. This is where we're looking at the bottom line. I mean, is there a big part of my job? Is it around financial oversight? Yes, but I come to work every day because I want to work with kids. I still do, after 26 years. So I think we never can forget that. So when I think about what I do with students, I think about what I've done over the last couple of years as superintendent, and we've founded a superintendent's advisory committee. And what we've been working on, and we were supposed to meet this week, but the snow days kind of derailed us a little bit. But it's in two parts. I start off with some leadership training for these students. And to be honest, a lot of these students already have some of these skills. They're members of student council, they're captains on their athletic teams. But I have a really, I think, great system of teaching kids some real tangible leadership skills at the high school level, which we go through over the course of 2 or 3 meetings. Then what we do is we look at what we do this year. What do you want to do this year for your school and for the district? And I basically tell them if we can or cannot do that. But I leave it to them to make that decision. I want them to do something for their school and for the district that they see real results now. I don't want to just talk in hypotheticals. I want to turn theory into action. I think students, they like that. You know, we can only talk so much about what we want to do. We actually want to do it. And they want to see results. So that's kind of phase 2 of that process. But I think anytime you're talking about really changing policies that maybe directly affect or adversely affect students, you want to elicit student feedback. I know that there's a lot of changes recently. There's changes around, or there will be changes around the cell phone policies, state and district-wide. I mean, there's changes that are constantly happening. I think to have students, whether it's through a member of the school committee or through a student council conversation, I think we should always empower students to be a strong voice and advocate for what they think is best for their school and their district. The first part of the question was around
supporting struggling students while also challenging advanced learners. So kind of.
Well, I think for any student, you want to remove obstacles for their learning, right? So what obstacles are impeding their progress in their learning? And I think that there's a lot of different ways that you can do that, but I think coming up or having a robust and healthy MTSS system, those Tier 1, Tier 2, and potentially Tier 3 supports for all students, making sure that teachers are aware how that system works and how students may not always be in Tier 1. They may at some points in their educational career be in Tier 3. So how do they shift throughout that pyramid, if you will? How are we supporting students, meeting students where they're at? And I think that a lot of our students come to school with some sort of trauma that may be visible or hidden. And how do we connect with students to make sure that they are feeling safe and seen at school? And lastly, we have students who are high achieving. And how do we make sure that while we're meeting the needs of all students, how do we challenge those students with the rigorous coursework that they deserve to make sure that they're ready for whether it's an AP class, college readiness, or career readiness? What are we doing programmatically through our rigorous courses, but also those pathways that we can build out to support those kids? So I think it's a lot of different factors, but you're having conversations with your gen ed student teachers, your special education teachers. Those building leaders need to be part of that conversation. But how are we aligning our curriculum that makes sure we can meet the need and remove the obstacles for all students?
Managing controversy and navigating conflict among stakeholders, including school committee, administrators, staff, families, and the broader community, is a core responsibility of the superintendent. First, please describe a situation in which you addressed an issue involving strongly differing viewpoints. Second, how did you balance ethical leadership, transparency, and respect for diverse perspectives while working toward a positive resolution? And then finally, what strategies did you use to build trust and secure consensus?
I'm trying to think of a situation I can share. I think to start, I think it does go back to being transparent and timely with communication, right? I think if there's controversy or if there's something that is festering on social media that could or could not be a rumor, and I'm not saying you address through social media, but if there's something that needs to be stated on behalf of the school district, the superintendent should be able to do that in a timely and transparent way. Maybe simultaneously informing the school committee of what's going on, right? That's the other layer to this. I'm thinking back to a situation a couple years ago. We had a situation where a student allegedly brought a weapon to school. So obviously, this is not something that just happens in one district. This happens in districts all over the country, unfortunately. But when you become aware of that kind of threat, you have to act accordingly. So you have to notify the police. In this particular situation, school was let out, so there were no students in the building, but there was an allegation that something was left in the building. Notify the police. Once the police were on site, what I did was I talked with the police chief who was on site at the time, and I immediately messaged the families about what was going on. I also then messaged the families again within the hour after they arrived to inform them that nothing was found, that this was not a viable threat. So we released, in a sense, a joint statement for myself and the police chief, letting the families know that there was no viable threat. I think situations like that, hopefully don't happen often, but when they do, you need to give timely and transparent communication. Obviously, you have to be kind of think about the confidentiality that's involved with situations like that, but it's also good to collaborate, too. And I think in this situation, the joint statement went a long way with our families to know that it wasn't just the superintendent saying, it was also the superintendent and the police chief who were saying something about this incident, and everybody was safe, and that was the most important piece. So I think that we've had other situations that have come up that have been tragic in some ways, that we've had to message those things very appropriately, and I think we've done a very good job with that. This year we've had some tough days with the passing of a staff member, and we had to be very thoughtful about how we did that, but I think we messaged that very appropriately to our students, to our staff, and then to our families, and we made sure that when we did that, we had the supports in place for our students as they were hearing that very sad news.
Can you please share some specific examples of how you have addressed achievement gaps among various student groups, whether it's looking at test scores to absenteeism data in your previous roles? What data has informed your decisions, and how did you ensure equitable access to high-quality instruction and supports? And how would you apply those strategies to Holliston?
Yeah, so accountability data is a big puzzle, right? In a lot of ways, I mean, there's a lot there. There's a lot to unpack, and I think you need to really know what you're looking at. I think that when you're looking at it from a 35,000-foot view, you can identify, some of your initial strengths and weaknesses as far as your stronger subjects per se, or maybe the subgroups that are struggling or lagging. But then you have to get much more granular. You have to look at the specific standards that students are really falling down on. And is that a timing, a scope and sequence issue, or is that an issue that we're not addressing these standards because we don't have the curriculum to support our instruction? And I think over the last couple of years, when we've looked at this data in North Brookfield, for example, the biggest kind of glaring or missing piece that we've noticed is that we really need to bring in some better high-quality instruction for our students, and that's what we've been able to do. And a lot of those decisions, a lot of those initial vetting processes and looking at what we can bring in for our students started by those big picture overlooks by the administration, and then having our teachers kind of take a deeper dive within their small groups, their grade level cohorts, their content level cohorts, and looking at where their specific kids, where the kids in their classes were doing, and what those gaps were telling them. And I think that granular look, really kind of shored it up for us in a lot of cases where we could say, you know what, we're really missing the mark on these standards in geometry, so we need to do a better job of this part of our instruction. What would be the best way to do that? Well, probably phasing in this particular curriculum. So that's how we started those conversations. And I think that's been to our advantage. I think we've done a lot of work around HQIM kind of rollout, giving teachers the time and the space to attend the PD they need to really build their capacity. Because when you take on a new curriculum, it's not like you purchase it or you get it through a grant fund and you can just say, have at it. We want teachers to be creative with their facilitation, but we also need to let them have the time that they need to meet with other colleagues, people around the state who are going through the same process, and learn the product. And then, when they come back, support them as they're rolling it out, and they're going to have you're going to face their struggles because it's a new product that they're using, but we need to give them the time and space and the support to make that happen. And then what we need to do as building and district leaders is kind of check in. How's it going? What else do you need from us? What else can I do for you? And then we start to shift that conversation, start to look at the results. How is this making an impact? And year one is sometimes, it's not where you want it to be. Year one, you're still going through that growing pain process. But year 2 and 3, if it's being rolled out effectively, you should start to see those marked improvements. And we're starting to see some of those in our core subjects. And that's some of the work that our teachers are really doing right now. And I think that model, that system that I've been utilizing the last 2 or 3 years, I think is very tried and true and consistent. And I think is something that came up today in many conversations with teachers, how there's a need or there's a want for a more strategic system of how we look at bringing in curriculum, and how we look at adopting curriculum, and how we support teachers as they roll this out. And I think that speaks to another area of growth potentially where we have a vision for our PD. How are we outlining the year of professional development for our teachers? How are we looking at supporting the 4 different buildings and those teachers who are rolling out that new curriculum? So there's a lot of layers to this, but I think starting with looking at student achievement, student accountability, I think that really drives the conversation of where we go next with instructional materials.
Can you please describe your philosophy regarding social and emotional learning and its role in student success? What qualitative and quantitative data have you used to assess student well-being and school climate for both students and staff? How have you led or supported initiatives to strengthen SEL and overall wellness at both the school and district level?
Yeah, great question. I think that it's, again, I said this before today, and I'll say it again now. I think for students to be high achieving academically, they need to feel safe and supported. So you think about educating a student, it's the whole child. It's a holistic approach to educating students. And if their mental well-being is not where it could be or should be, let's say, how are we supporting that student? There's a lot of pieces to this question and answer. I think that, in the last couple of years, very small example, we phased in something called Handle with Care. So, if a student is coming to school from their home where there was some sort of police presence the night before, we typically, or we have in the past, received a text from the police officer informing us about what's going on at the home. That just gives us a chance to meet that kid, that student where they're at, and support them. And not ask questions and pry, but to support them if they're coming to the school dysregulated. I think, again, through some grant funding through the state, we were able to, it was the Safe and Supportive School grant, and there was another SEL grant that we were awarded. In total, around $90,000. We were able to really add some universal screeners to use for both our elementary and high school students to kind of really check their baseline. And from the screening data, we were able to kind of identify next steps. We were able to phase in some counseling supports from BHN, so we brought some counselors in to work with the students on top of the adjustment and school counselors we already have. We were able to make this happen free of charge for the students. We also, we bring in therapy dogs, and we're in the process of training another therapy dog that's owned by a person on staff. So hopefully, maybe end of this year or next year at the very latest, we'll have that dog on site almost every day. It'll be accessible to students. But now we currently have therapy dogs that come in twice a month, which we've paid for out of a grant. We've also used Second Step, now K through 12, which is an SEL curriculum that I'm sure you've heard of that. Maybe it's used in your school too, but it's something that I think in conjunction with a lot of the other things we're doing is a nice piece. But I will say, more important than any of the things I just mentioned, it's building that safe and supportive environment for all students. It's being connected with students. It's the little things. It's like meeting the student at the doorway. It's going to their soccer game after school. It's asking the student how they're doing on a regular basis. It's getting to know your students. I think that's a huge piece to this. And I think with all of the pieces that we've put together, we've been able to kind of track. We've seen some increases in our chronic absenteeism because of it. We have used Panorama to collect some more data around, again, that culture and climate around how students are feeling. And by and large, and we will use these for high school students, they're feeling very good about where they're at the school. They feel seen, they feel heard, they feel supported when they come to school. And I think that speaks to what we've been doing with our students. We've also had, we have a strong connection with the DA's office who come in and speak to our students about bullying, harassment, mental health, and what they can do to support themselves. We have similar programs for parents on parent nights, so the parents are exposed to those same learnings from the DA's office. So we give kids and their families options if they need additional supports outside the school setting. We want to give them as much information as we can about what they can do outside of the school day. So I think it's evolving. I think there's always things we can add to this, but those are some of the things that really stick out to me. I will say that just because we have an SEL curriculum, that's not the end of it. That's only one part of it. What I dislike is when people say, well, we do SEL during advisory. No, social emotional learning should happen all the time. And it starts with having a warm and welcoming environment for our kids, all kids. And, breaking down those barriers, removing obstacles for kids is the best way you can do that.
Can you speak at all to the staff, sort of morale, belonging, to the programs or things that you've done in your district to make sure that your staff is feeling that same level of respect?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that I've seen some great work recently at the elementary school level where the principal has done a lot of fantastic work around, it's a very PBIS-centric school, and they're recognizing students on a regular basis for their star behavior is what we call it. But he's also doing something similar with the staff, and we're trying to recognize, some of the great work the staff is doing. He has come up with some silly contests. There's been bake-offs. There's been different things that the staff have done to kind of recognize things outside of their teaching world, what they're doing during the school day with their students, to have fun with each other. And it's gone over very well. The kids love it because they see kind of another side to their teacher. But we try to give shout-outs and recognition as much as we can. I really think we do a good job, and I think this is extremely important, is to really empower teachers to be leader voices, not just in their school staff, but within the district. We've had teachers speak at school committee about ideas around applied learning, but we want to empower teachers to be a strong voice for the positive work we're doing, and we try to really amplify that work that they're doing.
All right, this has got a couple parts, so.
Sure, I'll take notes.
So leading meaningful change often requires challenging long-standing practices, especially if data no longer supports those past practices. Can you please describe a time when you encountered resistance to change from staff or other stakeholders, and how you successfully led the organization forward? What strategies did you use to maintain trust, morale, momentum, collaborate, and how would you work with union leadership to overcome any initial concerns or objections regarding your proposed changes? And then I have a quick follow-on after that. But
Okay, yeah. I'll start with that the first 5 parts.
yeah, exactly.
I think it starts with a clear vision, right? I think it starts with the strategic plan of the district is so important, right? So what are our big bucket items that we value as a district, as a 4-school community, and what does the community want to see in their schools? So I think you need to be very thoughtful with that overarching plan for the entire district. And once that plan is established, and that's no small endeavor, I think it takes a lot of hard work by members of all stakeholder groups, students, staff, families, district and building leaders, members of the community, fire chief, police chief, town manager, you name it, where they have a stake in that conversation. I think then you can start to have those conversations about what that looks like in each building. But once that plan is in place, what I often see, and I talk about this with teachers all the time, is you have a set of, let's say, 3 or 4 overarching objectives for the district over the next 3 to 5 years. You can't then keep adding additional initiatives every year, right? I mean, I know things come up and you have to address things as they come, but you need to be consistent with that plan. Teachers need that consistency. They need that consistent support about achieving those initial and most important, impactful goals that the team has decided on. So I think it's being consistent with not only the messaging, but also the plan rollout. my wife is a fourth grade teacher, and, we try not to talk about school, but it comes up. And what she tells me, and I value her opinion a great deal, is that when a principal kind of reverses course after you've done 2 or 3 months on an initiative and then they just stop, that shouldn't happen as much as it does. There are going to be obstacles and bumps in the road. You need to work as a team. You need to, work as a collaborative team to overcome those obstacles. And sometimes that takes difficult conversations. Sometimes not everybody's going to buy in initially, and you have to kind of stay the course. Sometimes there's difficult conversations with members of the union leadership. But if you're working within the contract, and you're doing what's best for kids, I think you need to move forward with those initiatives. And I think that they should be laid out very clearly and succinctly in an overarching plan. Then it's really, you want your building principals and your district directors to then develop their own building improvement plans that are based on what the strategic plan says for the entire district. So it's being clear, it's being consistent, it's not changing course on a whim, it's making sure that, there are going to be obstacles, but you need to work as a team to overcome those obstacles. And I think that's greatly important. And the other piece to this is, how are you checking and monitoring success? You can't just develop a plan and put it on the bookshelf. You need to make sure that you're checking it on a regular basis, and you're making sure that you are checking off, so to speak, what you're accomplishing. And if there's something that's been on that plan for 1.5 years that hasn't been addressed, then maybe it wasn't really that important to begin with. Maybe it should be just taken off. But I think those are the conversations that you have within your buildings, that you have with your leadership team, and that is shared with the school committee as you're updating progress on meeting those goals.
Okay. And then, what do you believe is the most powerful word in the English language? If you want to, providing additional, color on that.
The most
Powerful word.
hope.
Okay.
Yeah. I think we can all be hopeful, and I think we can all strive for great things and hope to meet all of our dreams. And I could go on and on about that, but that's one word that I can think of right off the top of my head.
Thank you.
That's a good question.
I also have a multi-part question. Advancing diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging requires both courageous leadership and meaningful collaboration. Please describe what a genuine commitment to DEIB looks like in your leadership practice. Can you share some specific examples of how you have advanced DEIB in your current or prior role? And I know you provided some on this already, including how you've supported staff learning, aligned systems and policies, and engaged stakeholders. How would you continue and deepen this work in our district, particularly during times of public tension, disagreement, or heightened community concern?
Yeah, it's a great question. I've touched upon a few of these things, and I'll try to go a little bit deeper for you. I think that I embrace this work, and again, like I saw today, as I've been researching the district, but more importantly, what I saw today tells me that the district overall really embraces this work and embraces this culture for all of its students and staff members, and that is. I think right near the top of my list right now, as far as what I saw today, that was really inspiring for me. I think this work can be challenging. You're going to get different opinions, and I look at this work. It's apolitical. We're trying to build a safe space for all, and I think a safe space includes teaching students to have constructive discourse around differences. But that does not mean that we're going to entertain a discourse around racist activity or actions. I think there's a couple different ways to look at how you start this work, and I think that, again, I think a lot of this work has been started here. I've done some similar work in North Brookfield, albeit it looks a little bit different in some ways. We made a very conscious effort to when we revised our mission and vision, to add the word equity in both of those mission and vision statements, because that was something that was very much missing from any of our conversations as a district. And I can't say that everybody buys into that just yet, but that is our goal. You start with, if you think about the kind of the equity continuum, when you start with diversity, the end game is equity. Diversity is great. We want to acknowledge the diversity that we have in our district. We want to be inclusive. We want to foster a sense of belonging. But the end game is to have a school district and schools that really embrace equity. Because equity talks about making policies that embrace or accept everybody, that allow everybody to be part of this process. Equity allows everybody to have equal access. And that's what we want for all of our students, our families, and our staff members. So I think, again, like anything else that may be challenging and difficult, you need to have a clear vision. You need to have a clear kind of strategy, how you're going to communicate this to families and parents. Knowing that you may take some criticism, you may take some toxicity, but this is very important work. This is very important work. And again, I said this earlier tonight, we want students to be high achieving academically. They need to feel safe and supported. And if they don't feel safe and supported, we can't put those extra demands on them as students. They need to feel safe in their own skin when they come to school here. And I think that's a very important piece to all this. Again, I'm very excited about what's already happening here in the district. But I would welcome more conversation around what our next steps are and how we can make this even more a part of what we do on a day-to-day basis.
So this next question kind of relates to what Frank and Hillary actually had just asked, but as you're probably well aware, anti-Semitism is on the rise nationwide, and Holliston has not been totally immune from its own incidents. As superintendent, what actions would you take to address and prevent anti-Semitic incidents and acts of hate more generally?
First off, to denounce them. Like you can't sit idly. I think when we talk about any anti-racist or anti-Semitic rhetoric, if you will, you need to make sure that you name it, and you're going to make it very clear you're not going to allow that to happen in this school community. But like anything else we do around DEIB, that conversation takes increased education for students, potentially staff and families around what we're trying to do to our school community or with our school community. We can't expect a 15, 16, 12-year-old student to have all the answers, have all the knowledge about what's going on in our world. It's contingent on us to kind of support their learning growth around what's going on across our country, but also across the world, and what we're seeing. They're seeing it probably more than we are every day. They're on their screens. We're on our screens. We're seeing it on Twitter, on social media, on the TV. So we need to have a safe place for students to have those conversations, ask those questions in our classrooms, but also to empower teachers to kind of facilitate those questions. I think sometimes when teachers get caught off guard, they don't know how to respond, and they don't say anything. And that can be dangerous. And we want to give teachers the support as these things they continue to be ongoing. But the education for students is paramount. We want to make sure that students develop that common language around being anti-racist. They know what unconscious bias is. They know what all the isms are. I've said this before, all the isms that we see on a daily basis. And that if they have questions, the school environment is a safe place to ask those questions, because we want to give them a response that they can take with them, that they can use after they leave school. Again, this is how we set students up for success, and we need to empower them with the right information and a safe place to ask those questions and feel supported as they learn these things.
All right, next question. Recruiting, sorry, went down too far. Recruiting, hiring, and retaining high-quality professional teaching and support staff is critical to the success of our schools and our students. As superintendent, can you describe for us your approach to attracting and retaining new staff, including diverse staff, and supporting the ongoing growth of all teachers and paraprofessionals in our schools? What is your role in this process as superintendent, and what programs have you had success with that you can bring to Holliston for our teachers and paraprofessionals?
Programs such as, regarding what, I'm sorry?
Retainment.
Oh, retainment, okay. Well, I think retainment is an issue that a lot of districts are facing for various reasons. I think that, a couple of years ago, I went to a job fair with a building principal because we had never gone to one. it was kind of a miss because it wasn't really, we didn't see a lot of people looking for teaching or admin assistant positions at this particular job fair, but we wanted to try it. I mean, but we do a lot of the typical posting, if you will, on the regular sites. But as far as retainment is concerned, I think that, teachers and support staff are looking for a couple of major things, right? They're looking for fair and competitive wages, which I think is number one, and that's always going to be that way. And I think, when we look at contract negotiations for all of our bargaining units, we need to make sure what are the competitive comps in our area and make sure that we do our homework with that and that we know what someone is getting paid 2 towns away for doing the same exact job. Because competitive wages, I think, will always be right up near the top, if not number one. But number 2, or maybe not 1B, or maybe 1, I don't know, it depends on the person you ask, but do they feel seen, supported, and safe when they come to work? Did they feel valued? Did they like going to work? There was a couple questions today that I answered about not feeling necessarily seen at times, and it's sad for me because I want teachers to come to work, and most of the time, not every day, I get it, but most of the time, they feel like their work is valued, not only by their students but by their peers, their colleagues. I want teachers to feel like their superintendent supports them. The superintendent knows who they are. The superintendent knows what they teach. And I think that goes a long way. I want them to feel like they have a seat at the table in the sense that their opinion matters. So if there's an opportunity for them to be part of a new initiative, to give their feedback around curriculum, to give their feedback around anything, I welcome that. I want them to voice their opinion. And I think that two-way communication between all of our team members is invaluable. But the other piece of this, I think, is PD, professional development. I think that we need to give teachers and support staff, and I think maybe even more importantly, our paras and ABAs, the PD that they deserve and they need. It's not one size fits all. Just like when we're teaching kids, not every student learns the same way. Not every teacher and para needs the same professional development. Based on the needs of the school or the district, or based on what curriculum they're rolling out, do they have the time to learn that curriculum? Do they have the time to learn a new screening tool that we want them to use? Do they have the time to make sure that they are learning a new gradebook initiative? I mean, there's all kinds of things we can think about. But that goes down to thoughtful planning. And I think that there's potentially an opportunity here to look at a district-wide PD vision and plan and calendar, if you will, about what we're going to do for the whole year with what group and what they're going to do on every single professional development day that we have scheduled for the district. I think that's really important. If they see their time as being valued by their building district leaders and that they can come to work when the kids aren't here and learn something that will make them a better educator, I think that's what we should be doing. We should not be wasting their time. We should not have them show up to a staff meeting and have them sit around idly. We should have them working or talking with their gen ed teacher, their special ed teacher, with their like-minded colleagues about how they can become better as professionals. And I think that's something that's probably grossly lacking in a lot of districts. And I think that we can do a lot of work here with that.
All right, so for some reason I was given the finance questions. Obviously budgets are always a problem, always challenging. And while we are here to educate students, we can't do that without money. So this is kind of a multi-part again, but I'm going to break it up for you. Can you please describe your role in financial planning and fiscal management in your current or previous districts, however you want to do it, and how have you balanced strategic investment in district priorities with responsible stewardship of taxpayer resources? How have you ensured that financial decisions align with the district's mission, strategic plan, and student needs? And then, believe it or not, this is actually just the first part. How have you balanced school committee and admin priorities if there's differences there as well?
Okay.
And then there's 2 more.
2 more,
Yeah.
okay. Currently, I do all the budget presentations. That's the way I've done it in my 4 years. I work collaboratively with our admin team, but we build a budget based on our strategic plan, based on the needs of our kids. What I've done in years past is I've looked at, and I've done it a couple different ways, but I think my first couple of years in this role, I kind of put all the cards on the table. I said, this is what we absolutely want and need, and I put everything out there. And I think it's good in some respects because then the committee, the taxpayers know exactly what the school wants, what they think they need to be successful. I've scaled that back a little bit in the last couple of years, especially this year, because I think that we're constantly, after kind of the pandemic went away and we lost ESSER funding, and that fiscal cliff that we've all talked about, we saw obviously a deep drop in funds, and where Chapter 70 is kind of always in flux, and we're very, very heavily relying on our revolving accounts to kind of support our budget. I've been a little more safe with my initial presentation, this year especially. So, we're looking at a level funded budget for this year based on many factors. But that's an anomaly. I think that what you want to do is present a level service budget. And I know but that's only the first step. I think that when you do that, you have an ongoing conversation with the business manager, with the town manager, with members of town leadership about, okay, if a level service budget is at 5 or 6% over where we were last year, what is kind of the sweet spot? Where do we need to come in to make this all work for everybody? And that's kind of the next phase of the process. If you start at 6% over FY26 into FY27, and the goal is to get to 2.5%, how do you close that gap? Right? How do you close that gap? And is that gap going to come on the backs of cutting personnel? Is that going to come on dipping into revolving accounts a little bit more? Is that going to come from unexpected funds from, I think last year we saw a little bit more money in Chapter 70 than we had in the years prior. It kind of stayed true as the governor's initial budget kind of stayed true through the whole process. Sometimes you'll get extraordinary relief through circuit breaker that you weren't expecting. So things can happen throughout the process, but you have to have a plan as to how you're going to come up with to meet that deficit. And when you're doing that, I think it's very important to present it as impact statements. If we cut this position or this program, it will impact these students. If we cut this will happen. And you want to be very clear with the committee, but more importantly, the families and the students about what's going on if we, in fact, cut these positions. So I think it's very clear to message that. And that's not in a contentious way. That's a factual, objective way. I think it's very clear. If you cut an English teacher, what the impact could be. If you cut an art teacher, what the impact could be. I think it's going to be very glaring for a lot of students and families. So you need to be upfront about that. And that's where I think the committee comes in and gives feedback about the direction of the budget. What are the priorities of the district, the committee, and what's in the best interest of our students? So it's an ongoing process, and I think that it's again, if you have a starting point based on conversations with a town administrator, town manager, you kind of know where the town's going to be. And if there's just too much of a gap, that's another whole conversation. Maybe there's a conversation down the road for an override. Is there a flavor for an override? Is that something that the town should entertain? But that's a conversation, maybe not for now, but that's something that could be discussed based on the shortfall and the needs of the district. But I think I would go back to what I said initially. You're looking at projecting out what the state's going to give you, what the town is willing to come to the table with, and also what do you have in your revolving accounts that you could offset some of these costs. And if you have robust revolving accounts, if you continue to dip into those accounts, how much will that adversely affect the district in the long run? You could do that once or twice, but you want to make sure you keep those robust in case situations come up during the school year too.
Okay, and so can you share a specific example of a time when you had to make a difficult budget decision, such as reductions or reallocations, and how you manage that process? Yeah, so I mean, I can think of this year. So presenting last year for FY26, we had essentially an $800,000 gap we had to fill, and we have a very small budget compared to Holliston. So it was reworking the numbers, so to speak, and we were luckily able to get, we had some numbers that we didn't project appropriately initially on circuit breaker. You sometimes tend to project low, and when we find that number's going to come in at 75% reimbursement, we can then project up a little bit. But we did the same thing I just talked about. We developed the impact statements for the loss of these positions. And what we're able to do is take some of the positions that were potentially going to be cut and turn them into district-wide positions. So this position would service students in K through 12 as opposed to just 8 through 12. So
It didn't give as many opportunities for, let's say, in our class, but we were able to give art to all of our students, even if it wasn't on a daily basis. We had art available at least weekly for all of our students. We did a similar practice with our music. We made the music teacher a district-wide position as opposed to 2 1.0 positions. And that allowed us to kind of still offer those 2 programs, but to greatly diminish our budget. We took our facilities director position this year and went from 1.0 to 0.5 based on the needs of our district, and that helped reduce some of the costs for our budget. So it was a combination of looking at the increases in our revolving accounts and also the reduction from 1.0 to 0.5 for some of our positions, and how we kind of reallocated some of those positions to make them district-wide as opposed to building-based.
Okay. I guess if I have time, how have you incorporated data enrollment trends or program evaluations into your budgeting decisions? I mean, you sort of answered around that a little bit, but I guess especially data and enrollment trends.
Yeah, so I think the enrollment trends for us, I mean, I know there's different groups that you can use, those long-term trends. I think, we're in a spot, again, there's some similarities, but some big differences between the 2 districts. But when I think of North Brookfield, for example, our numbers are pretty small. So, but we can't just go and eliminate 1 second-grade teacher because that grade is small that year, because that's going to trickle up, if you will, as the students progress. So we've had to say, okay, even if we have a down year for an elementary school year, we need to keep at least those 2 or 3 teachers that we have. We've been able to reduce some instruction at the high school level because those numbers have dwindled, where we can survive with a 1.5 or a 1 for certain subjects. But at the elementary level, based on those classroom numbers, and as those students transition up, we've had to keep those numbers where they're at because we want to keep those class sizes down for those students.
Thank you for indulging me.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Okay. As you may be aware, in December, the MSBA invited us to the eligibility period for potential renovation or replacement of our 56-year-old high school building.
Yeah.
As our next superintendent, you will be intimately involved in this process, working closely with our town officials, as well as planning for our new and innovative instructional spaces with the school committee, staff, and families. Please describe your experience with capital building projects, such as construction of a new building or school, and share with us some of the vision and opportunity that you see in creating this brand new and innovative learning space. And then additionally, how would you include the voices of administrators, faculty, and staff, and families in the decision-making process?
Yeah, I think, again, many parts of that question. And I answered some of the questions today, so I'll reflect back on what I said earlier. But I think that's an exciting endeavor. I think that's how you energize a community to really to rally behind a district. When you're planning on a new high school in particular, where you think about all the spaces that are within a high school building, it's really exciting you want to hear those voices. You want to hear parents and students weigh in on what they want. You think about the maker spaces, you think about the science labs, you think about the advanced manufacturing spaces that we may be able to build in, you think about the athletic complex that may be housed within the school, the auditorium, how the acoustics, there's a lot of pieces to that you want to really bring in as many voices from inside and outside the school as possible. Because I think there's a lot of excitement around that. I think 56-year-old high school it's a tired high school. There's still a lot of great things going on in it, but it's a tired building. So that's exciting, and I think that the process, although long and can be tedious, I think it's a very very rewarding process too. I've been a part of one building project on the fringes when I was a principal at a previous district. I've also been I've overseen an athletic complex build. So I don't have intimate MSBA knowledge yet, but as I mentioned earlier today, I have a lot of colleagues who have been through the process, and I have a colleague from town over who's going through a high school project right now, and so he is constantly sharing me, what's going on, how that works. I think that, the initial bid process is exciting. I think that I have a close friend who works for a company called AET Labs, and his sole job is to go into new buildings and help the building principal or the building leaders design those science labs. And that's the kind of excitement that I think that we can really rally the community around. It's like, what do you envision the opportunities that we're not even talking about right now for our students? What can this new building offer our students, not only in the next 5 or 6 years, but 10, 15 years down the road? And also what cost savings will we have by this new building? Yes, the initial cost will be large. We understand that. But as far as environmental savings, what can we save the community in the long haul as we go to a more efficient building for our students in our community? So I think it's a very exciting time for Holliston. I think that that's definitely something that will be a talking point for a lot of people for a long time until that project comes to fruition. But I'd be excited about tackling that project.
Thank you.
How would you define leadership, and how do you demonstrate that with your leadership style? What particular strengths do you believe you'll bring to our school system? I'll stop there. There's a second part, but we'll cover that one first.
Yeah. I think good leaders empower others to be leaders. I think that the answer is not coming from just one person. The answer is in the room. And when I think about a high-functioning leadership team, I think about a collaborative team that is working for the good of, in this case, the school district or their school. They're rowing the boat in the same direction. And to do that, there's some elements that you need to have in place in order to do that. You need to have a sense of trust among each other. You need to foster a sense of psychological safety where anybody on this team feels safe to give their opinion and not be ridiculed by other members of the team. Titles, in many ways, do not matter, right? And I mean that. I think the superintendency is a very important role and a very important role for messaging the vision of the district. But I am not the person who's in the classroom every day teaching French to our fourth graders. I'm not the person who's teaching calculus to our high school juniors. We need to work as a team to make sure that our plan is tight, our plan is understandable by all of our stakeholders, and that our goals are challenging yet attainable. And I think it's continuing to message that to all our stakeholders. And I think when we do come up against obstacles, how I want to support leaders is by being a thought partner for our leaders, being someone who they can rely on to work through an issue or a problem together. I think it's very important that we break down those silos. I had a great conversation today with the police chief, the fire chief, the town manager, and the word that they all used multiple times was collaboration. And I really think, and we had about a 30-minute meeting today, I really strongly feel after leaving that meeting that this community has some leaders in place that want to work very closely with the school district. They want to see this district to be the best it can be, and they want the community to be the best it can be, and they want to work as a team. And I think you have to foster that same kind of feeling for our internal team here. And that's not just the superintendent, the assistant superintendent, the business manager, the principals. That's the superintendent, the paraprofessional, the head maintenance person, that's cafeteria workers, that's anybody who has an active role in the school district. Their input is valued, and there would be a place for everybody to give their input on how the school district can be better. And I think, if I were to be in this position, the first thing I would do, the first 60 to 90 days, is to really take in as much feedback as I can from all the stakeholder groups. I would love to sit down and meet with every single member of the staff here, whether it's one-to-one or in a small group, and have some overarching questions about how we can make Holliston the best district can be. What do we do well, and what do we need to improve upon? And I think that would be my job, to collect all that initial data and to kind of put that together, not only just to present to you, but to present to our community as a whole about where we want to go as a district and how do we value education in this community. So I think there's many parts of that. I think that you also have to play the long game. I think that, again, when you come up with that clear plan, that clear vision for the district, you are going to, like I said, you will hit those bumps in the road. You need to be consistent and work with fidelity in making sure that you are trying to attain those goals. And I think that's something that I've been happily successful at over the last 3 to 5 years, 3 to 4 years as superintendent. I think that we've played that long game very well, that I've supported administrators through challenging times. They've supported me because we have that shared trust and a shared vision.
Awesome. So as a follow-up to that, or second part of that, how would you adapt your leadership approach, or what new skills would you need to develop when moving from a smaller district to Holliston, which has 2,650 students across 4 schools with specialized programs like French immersion and Montessori?
Yeah, so I think, I'll go back to something I just said. I think it's collecting as much information as possible. If I would be in this position, I'm coming from this district from the outside. I don't really know anybody in the district. I don't have 2, 3, 10 years of experience here. I didn't grow up here. So be learning about what's going on, almost like a SWOT analysis of the district, personally and professionally. But as far as the small district to the large district, I think coming from a small district is to my benefit. And the reason I say that is because I've had to wear many hats in my current district. And I embrace that. But you have to take on the role of director of curriculum, of kind of the financial executive in a sense as far as the budgetary process is concerned, grant manager. 99% of the grants are coming from my office. So I think having all those experiences, I have a better understanding of what goes on in a larger district. But I also fully recognize that we want to hire professionals for these positions. We want to hire people that not necessarily have 15, 20 years experience, but are professionals of what they do, and I want to empower them to be the best they can be. That's not through micromanaging. That's through support. That's through strategic thought partnering. That's through meeting with a purpose. But it's empowering them to be the best they can be. And when they do things well, it's celebrating their successes and showcasing their successes for the entire district. When a teacher does well, when a principal does something great, when a student does something great, I want those people to get the recognition they deserve. And I want to empower them to take those changes to be successful. And I think that's what good leadership does. I think that's, coming from a small district to a large district, I don't think it's really an impediment. I think it's actually an advantage. And I think to have those additional layers, it's going to be my job to make sure that everybody feels like they have access to what's going on, that they feel like that the communication that's coming out of my office, central office, is received by all stakeholders. And that will be kind of, I think, the learning point for me. But I think we can do that. I'm very confident we can do that.
Thank you. So on the 3-part question, just as a broad overview, strategy plans, reporting progress, evaluating by school committee. So what I mean by that is please share how you would work with your administrator, staff, and school committee to develop a vision, long-range plans, and annual goals that build trust, strengthen relationships, and bring the community together around the success of students. Then how do you report progress toward reaching such goals and measuring their outcomes? And how do you think the school committee should evaluate you on that progress?
As far as the plan for the district, I think we've talked about that in a couple different answers. The strategic planning is huge, and I think the current plan runs through 2027, and I think, starting next year, we're going to start to look at, what are our next steps as we look to develop our new plan? What are the things that may hold consistent with this old plan to the new plan? How do we kind of put together our stakeholder groups to have that ongoing conversation? Do we hire an outside consultant? I've done it both ways in past experiences, and they're both impactful. But how do we kind of bring everybody together to start that conversation, if you will? Once that plan is developed, so from 27, 28 on, whether it's 3 to 5 years, that's where building leaders and directors will develop their individual building plans. But those individual building plans, even though they come from the greater strategic plan, should still be with input from the teachers, support staff, any member of the staff on that building. There still should be an opportunity for staff to weigh in on the direction the building principal is going with their school improvement plan. All of those documents should be presented to the school committee. I think the strategic plan is the biggest one in the sense that hopefully some members of the committee will be part of that process, and you'll be seeing that process as we build it from the ground up. So you'll be able to kind of share the excitement around the newest plan. So that's the first step. But the school improvement plans that the principals will develop will mostly come from that overarching district-wide plan. I think it's then contingent upon the leadership team, both as a whole and within the school buildings, to really hold themselves accountable and be honest with themselves. Are we doing what we said we're going to do? And are we hitting our timelines? Are we making sure we're messaging this to all of our stakeholder groups? do our families have knowledge of what this plan entails? Is there an opportunity for them to have a continued seat at the table in the sense that can they help with the implementation of parts of this plan? Can they help with the messaging of this plan? I think it's really important to have strong parent voices behind this plan, so when you roll it out, people know what it means and not education speak, but real language, but also how they can help facilitate and talk about this with their friends and what they can do to support the school district. I think that's very important. Regarding the superintendent evaluation piece, I think you evaluate the superintendent on their goals, but also I think their accountability or their achievement of the district-wide goals too. And I think two are different and similar. I think that there should be progress monitoring for both, and whether that's through you, Joe. I know you said you were part of that subcommittee. Whether it's an ongoing Google Doc that I'm sharing with the committee or with the subcommittee, but I think those are also conversations you can have throughout the year about where are we at with your goals, with the district goals, which might be again a more formalized presentation to the full committee as a monthly or bi-monthly update. But I think those things in tandem kind of round out the whole picture of where we're at as a district.
Okay, well, thank you for answering our questions. Is there anything you would like to share with us in support of your candidacy at this time? Anything else? You've shared a lot.
Yeah, I just want to say again that today was a fantastic day. A few of you said it was a long day, but yes, it was a long day, but it was a great day. And it's tough because we all came off of 2 snow days, but we're back here tonight. But it was great to talk with members of your faculty and staff, many of your students, who, they just beamed about talking about their schools. And I think that's, a great asset to have. And I wanted you to hear that from me. I'm sure you're going to hear that again. But it's really an asset to have students who are really that thoughtful, articulate about the connection they have with their teachers and their schools. But I think that overall, I think Holliston is in a position, there's a lot of successes already happening. But I think there's an opportunity to make this district even better than it's ever been. And I think that it will take a lot of thoughtful planning and creative leadership and the right people in the right seats to make that happen. And I think that what I've learned today, what I've learned over the last couple of weeks in my conversations with some of you and members of the committee, the team here already, is that I think that parts of my skill set will really fit nicely with what's going on here in Holliston. I think that this opportunity is really an opportunity that I would cherish and an opportunity that I would work extremely hard to really build those programs for success for all students in Holliston. And I think that I would be very excited to have that opportunity. So I thank you, all of you, for your time. And I really appreciate you meeting with me today and on Saturday. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
Oh, motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So,
Second. I'm making a motion to adjourn.
Oh, okay.
And so-
Second. Okay.
all in favor? Great. Okay, thank you. And good night.